A quiet life until it wasn't. The morning sun filtered through the leaves of the tall oaks lining Greenbrier Meadows, casting long shadows across pristine sidewalks and immaculately trimmed lawns. Every house looked like it had come from the same luxury catalog. Taupe siding, white pillars, double garages, and American flags positioned just so, fluttering with regulated symmetry. It was the kind of place where sprinklers came on at exactly 6 a.m., and homeowners had matching mailboxes. Perfect. Predictable. Peaceful. Marcus Hale stood barefoot in his backyard, a steaming mug of black coffee in hand, the grass cool beneath his feet. He breathed in deeply, the quiet hitting him like a soft wave. No gunfire. No static over a comms unit. No boots scraping sand. Just the rustle of the trees and a faint hum from a neighbor's electric mower. After 20 years of combat deployments and classified missions, this was the life he had promised himself. Slow, clean, and uneventful. His wife, Alana, stepped out behind him, slipping her arm around his waist. She smelled like oranges and lavender, her curly hair pulled back in a messy bun. She wore a sundress, and her eyes scanned the small garden she had started. Bell peppers, mint, tomatoes. One of the few personal touches in an otherwise uniform backyard. "Everything looks good this morning," she said, smiling. "It's thriving because of you," Marcus replied, kissing her temple. They had only lived in Greenbrier Meadows for 4 months. Moving out of D.C. was Alana's idea. A fresh start after retirement, a community with structure, she said. Somewhere they could blend in, plant roots, maybe even have a dog. And on the surface it was exactly that. But Marcus had been trained to see through surfaces. The way the HOA president, Charles Denning, referred to him as Mr. Hale, but always called Alana dear. The way some neighbors waved with strained politeness but never struck up conversation. The way patrol vehicles circled a little slower when Marcus walked the street alone at night. Not open hostility. Just tension. Controlled smiles. Hidden rules. The first HOA notice had come 2 weeks after they moved in. "Dear homeowner, your trash bins must be placed precisely behind the fence line and not visible from the street. Please correct this within 24 hours to avoid fines." Marcus had checked the bins 3 times. They were aligned perfectly. "Maybe it was just an automated warning," Alana had said. "Not a big deal." But then came the others. "Your grass is a 1/4 inch too long. Exterior lighting must be neutral white, not soft yellow. Your American flag exceeds the maximum allowable dimensions." All minor. All targeted. Alana tried to smooth things over. She joined the community's garden committee, baked muffins for their nearest neighbors, even complimented the HOA secretary's overly aggressive golden retriever. Still, the subtle jabs came, almost always aimed at Marcus. During the last HOA meeting, Denning had chuckled in front of the group. "We like to keep things orderly around here. Can't have any rogue commandos changing the neighborhood's look, right, Marcus?" Few laughed. Marcus smiled tightly. Let it go. But he noticed the shift in Alana afterward. The way she locked the doors twice at night now. The way she glanced over her shoulder when watering her plants. And yesterday a strange encounter. Marcus had returned from a jog and found Alana arguing with 2 men in security uniforms at the edge of their property. HOA, compliance officers. One was scribbling on a notepad. The other had a hand resting on his utility belt. No firearm, but the message was clear. "They said our garden border isn't regulation height," Alana had explained afterward, voice tight. "They threatened a citation. And possible removal." Marcus didn't react. Didn't raise his voice. Just nodded. Then walked into the garage, closed the door, and stared at the flag folded in a shadow box on the shelf. His team's final deployment together. 3 never made it home. He had learned long ago not to act on the first provocation. Or the second. But he kept count. Measured patterns. Calculated responses. That night, he cleaned the house's exterior lighting and adjusted the sprinklers. Alana teased him for fussing over HOA compliance. He just smiled. But something had shifted in him too. They weren't just notices. They were tests, probes, looking for a reaction. And soon someone would push too far. Unwelcome order. Marcus was up before dawn again, moving with the quiet, practiced precision of a man who once packed gear by moonlight in hostile terrain. He trimmed the edges of his lawn with exact cuts, not because the HOA required it, but because it calmed his hands. Order was something the Navy had drilled into him, but here in the suburbs of Greenbrier Meadows, order came in a different flavor, one lined with polite smiles, suspicious eyes, and too many rules built for exclusion. He straightened as the low growl of an electric cart approached, white, with the HOA logo etched in gold on the side. 2 men rode inside. One, thin and pale, wore wraparound sunglasses though the sun had barely risen. The other was thicker, red-faced, chewing gum with his mouth open. They didn't wave as they passed. Didn't smile. The cart rolled by slowly, almost predator-like, and then stopped just a few feet past Marcus's property line. The man with the sunglasses scribbled something on a clipboard. The other one looked back over his shoulder, meeting Marcus's gaze with something between curiosity and challenge. Marcus said nothing, just stared until the cart rolled on. Inside, Alana was making breakfast, steel-cut oats with honey, blackberries, and a soft R&B playlist drifting from the smart speaker. She moved with habitual cheer, but her smile slipped when he told her about the drive-by. "That's the second time this week," she said, trying to keep her tone even. "Do you think we should talk to someone?" "We already did," Marcus said, pouring coffee. "They know who we are. That's what I'm afraid of." Alana had grown up in the city. She knew how things looked on the surface and how quickly the surface could crack. Since moving here, she had noticed the difference in how neighbors treated them. No one ever said anything wrong, but no one invited them to dinner either. They got nods instead of handshakes, small talk instead of conversation. Their immediate neighbors on the left, an older white couple, had once made a comment about how refreshing it was to see a clean-cut black family moving in instead of the usual riffraff. Alana had smiled stiffly. Marcus had said nothing, but he hadn't forgotten it. Later that morning, a letter appeared on their porch, hand-delivered, not mailed. "Dear Mr. and Mrs. Hale, we've received multiple complaints regarding unapproved modifications to your backyard garden fencing. Per HOA guidelines, alterations must be submitted through Form C-17 with photographic renderings for board approval. Failure to comply within 5 business days may result in fines or removal." It was unsigned. Alana's voice trembled as she read it aloud. "That's the same fencing I submitted 2 weeks ago. Emailed them. I even brought copies to the meeting." Marcus took the letter, folded it once, tossed it into the trash. But the disturbance had been planted, deep and insidious, not just in the letter, but in the way it made his wife feel powerless, unsafe. That afternoon, Marcus walked the perimeter of their yard, checking the garden fencing. It was the exact color and height permitted by the HOA handbook. He double-checked. Still, something about it had apparently offended the invisible standards of Greenbrier. Across the street, a man washed his black Range Rover with a power washer. He was shirtless, paunchy, and white. His garage had mismatched lights, and his grass was overgrown on one side. But no clipboard had ever visited his driveway. Marcus knew. He'd been watching. When the man glanced over, he raised a hand lazily. "Morning, brother," he called out. Marcus offered a shallow nod. "Morning. Still adjusting to Greenbrier, huh?" Marcus raised an eyebrow. "We're doing fine." The man smirked. "Yeah, sure. Just word of advice man to man. Don't stir the pot. These people, they don't like when the rules get questioned." Marcus stared at him for a long moment. "Good thing I'm not questioning the rules. I'm following them." The man shrugged and turned back to his car. "Just trying to help." That evening, Alana went for a walk by herself around the block, something she used to enjoy. She came back 20 minutes later, visibly shaken. "They followed me," she whispered. "Who?" "The same 2 from the cart. They didn't say anything. But they stopped next to me. Just stared. Marcus clenched his jaw. Maybe I imagined it, she added quickly, trying to smooth the fear. Maybe it's nothing. Maybe they were just patrolling. But it wasn't nothing. And Marcus knew it. He sat on the edge of their bed that night in the dark, listening to Alana's breath even out as she slept. He stared at the faint outline of the wall, but in his mind, he was back in Afghanistan, Yemen, Ukraine. Places where he could read a threat in the way a man stood, how long he stared, or where he placed his hands. What was happening here was slower, cleaner, but no less deliberate. Marcus wasn't looking for a fight. He never did. But Greenbrier Meadows was looking for a lesson. And it was close to finding one. The sound of control breaking. Saturday arrived with the kind of weather brochures promised. Blue skies, crisp air, and a breeze gentle enough to stir the petals in Alana's garden. Marcus sat on the porch with a book in hand, though he wasn't reading. His eyes tracked the routine movement of the neighborhood. The same joggers, the same golf carts, the same feeling. He had once told Alana that violence wasn't always loud. Sometimes it came dressed in khakis and carried a clipboard. By midday, she was out back trimming herbs near the raised beds they'd built together. The wooden frame was less than 2 feet tall, crafted exactly to HOA specifications. Marcus had double-checked every measurement, cross-referenced every code. But he knew, as surely as he knew how to disarm a tripwire, that none of that would matter. That's when the cart came again. He saw it from the front steps. 2 men same as before. One wore mirrored aviators and a scowl. The other, broader and bald, with a tattoo peeking out from under his sleeve, stepped off before the cart even stopped. Marcus stood. The bald man was already raising his voice. He couldn't hear the words, but the posture told the story. Chest puffed out, hands gesturing wide, pointing down at the garden border. Alana stood her ground, confused but calm. Then the man stepped closer. Too close. Marcus didn't walk. He moved, fast, precise, without sound. By the time he reached the backyard gate, he heard it. I'm telling you again, ma'am. This is a violation. You need to let us inspect it, or we'll have to escalate. Alana's voice tight. You're not authorized to enter our property without notice. She's right, Marcus said quietly as he stepped through the gate. You have no jurisdiction here unless you file a civil order. And even then, you don't do it like this. The bald man turned. Who are you supposed to be? Marcus didn't answer. He just stepped forward, placing himself between Alana and the enforcer. The man's breath reeked of stale coffee and ego. This is an HOA matter, the man said. You don't want to make this harder than it needs to be. Then follow your bylaws, Marcus replied. Because I've read them. You're violating 3 right now. The man's jaw tensed. Behind him, his partner remained seated in the cart, one hand near his belt, where a flashlight hung like a badge of power. All right, the enforcer said, sneering. We'll note the refusal. But don't be surprised if this goes to legal. Marcus smiled without warmth. I hope it does. They turned to leave. And for a second Marcus thought that was the end of it. Then the bald man muttered as he passed Alana. Should have known you people wouldn't follow the rules. Alana stiffened. Marcus froze. What did you say? She asked. I said. The man turned smug. You people are always quick to cry foul but never follow the book. You think a garden gives you a pass. Alana's breath caught. Don't talk to me like that. He took a step toward her. Marcus stepped between them again. This time without words. Just presence. You want to go? The man said, scoffing. Is that what this is? Before Marcus could speak, the man shoved him. It was a mistake. Marcus didn't react like a man caught off guard. He didn't stumble. He didn't even blink. He pivoted slightly, and in one fluid motion, redirected the man's momentum. The enforcer stumbled past him, off balance, hitting the edge of the garden bed with a sharp grunt. Marcus didn't follow up. He didn't need to. The man scrambled to his feet, red-faced and breathing hard. "This is assault." "No," Marcus said evenly. "This is restraint." The second man in the cart had stood now, holding up a phone. "We got it on video." "You're in trouble now, tough guy." Marcus nodded. "Good. Make sure you keep the part where your friend trespassed, used a racial slur, and assaulted a homeowner's wife." The man paused, suddenly unsure. Alana stepped forward, her voice calm but cutting. "There are 5 cameras on our property. 4 angles of what just happened. I'll be sending them to our attorney tonight." Both men hesitated, then retreated. The cart whined as it backed down the driveway, the spell broken. Inside, Alana sat down on the couch and exhaled like she'd been holding her breath for weeks. "They touched me," she whispered. "He reached for me before you came out. Like I wasn't real." Marcus sat beside her. His jaw was locked tight, but his voice was gentle. "Are you okay?" She nodded. "But I'm scared." He reached over and took her hand. "Don't be." And he meant it. Because now the line had been crossed. The petty games, the veiled warnings, the compliance theater. It was all over. They thought he was just another quiet man with a tidy lawn. They forgot that some men train their entire lives for moments like this. The quiet way justice comes. The next morning arrived with silence, not the peaceful kind Marcus had grown used to, but a brittle stillness. As if the neighborhood were holding its breath. Alana sat at the kitchen table, cradling a mug she hadn't touched. The bruises on her arm had darkened overnight. Small, cruel fingerprints that said more than any HOA letter ever could. "You sure you want to go through with this?" she asked. Marcus didn't answer immediately. He stood at the window, watching a few early risers tend to their perfect lawns, eyes averted from his house. No one waved this time. Word had spread. "I don't want a fight," he said quietly. "But I won't let them think this is normal." He spent the morning compiling everything. Video footage. Photos of the bruises. Screenshots of prior emails, citations, and even a few veiled threats from the HOA's internal message board. Ones most residents didn't know were archived. The final piece was the footage from the backyard. The shove, the slur, the attempted inspection without a warrant. He uploaded everything to a cloud drive and copied it to 3 USB sticks. Then he made one more call, to a friend from his Navy days who now worked in legal affairs for a civil rights nonprofit. "Tell me exactly what I need to do to make this right," he asked. What followed was quiet, surgical, and far more devastating than any punch. By Monday evening, an anonymous email blast went out to every homeowner in Greenbrier Meadows. It included a formal complaint filed with the county, a pending civil suit, and a summarized video, edited cleanly, showing the confrontation without commentary. Just facts, just truth. And the title on the footage was simple. When HOA power becomes harassment. The community meeting scheduled for that Thursday was usually half full. That night it was standing room only. Marcus didn't speak first. He let the footage play. The murmurs. One woman even stood and walked out, visibly shaken. Then Marcus stood up. "My name is Marcus Hale. My wife and I moved here because we believed in community. In order. In respect." He paused, letting the silence settle. What we found was something else. A system of selective enforcement. Disrespect. And when that wasn't enough, force. Some of the board members tried to interject. Charles Denning, the smug HOA president, began to bluster about context and due process. But Marcus cut him off. "You filed over a dozen citations against my home for things that aren't violations. You authorized unlicensed security to trespass. And you allowed, maybe encouraged, racially motivated harassment." More gasp. "I served this country for 2 decades, Marcus continued. "I followed harder rules under more pressure than any of you can imagine. I don't bend just because a man in a cart tells me to." He looked at the crowd. "But I believe in systems. In real justice. So I've filed a suit. And I've handed over every piece of evidence to county officials and the media." A man near the back spoke up. Why didn't you just come to us first? I did, Marcus said. No one listened. By the time the meeting ended, the board was splintering. Denning looked shaken. 2 members resigned by the next morning. The security enforcers were suspended pending investigation, and a formal review of HOA practices was launched. 3 days later, the cart stopped patrolling. By the end of the month, new leadership had been nominated. And Alana's garden fence stayed up. That Saturday, Marcus sat on the porch again, coffee in hand. But this time, Alana was beside him with her sketchbook open. The air felt cleaner. Not because anything physical had changed, but because something invisible had been cleared. A younger couple strolled past and waved. This time it wasn't forced. A neighbor from 3 doors down dropped off a fresh peach cobbler with an apology note clipped to the lid. Alana opened it, chuckling softly. Turns out peach cobbler is the universal language for sorry I looked away. Marcus smiled. It's a start. He leaned back, letting the sunlight warm his skin. I thought I was done fighting, he said after a while. But I realize now. I just wanted to choose what was worth fighting for. Alana looked at him. And was this worth it? He nodded. Every second. Across the street, a small boy rode his bike in a circle, giggling as his mother chased after him. The breeze picked up. Somewhere down the block, a wind chime sang. It was quiet again. Not brittle. Not tense. Just peaceful. And this time it was real.